It was all a dream. 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 It was all.
Welcome, everybody, to the It Was All a Dream podcast. I have a very special guest today. This will be a different type of show. Yes, a different type of show. Today's guest enjoys helping others overcome pains and accomplish their dreams. She desires to see all healthy and whole, enjoying partnering with individuals to accomplish. She has a master's in social work and has enjoyed helping people in the community throughout her career. She has over 13 years experience working in the field of child welfare, protecting children, partnering with families, and otherwise advocating well-being of others. She has worked in behavioral health her entire career, and over the last several years, she's also focused on primary being a therapist. I'd like to give a nice, warm welcome to none other than Jacque Battle. How you doing this morning?
I am doing well. How are you?
Hey, you got me up early this morning. Not really my thing. No, I'm just playing. I am a morning person. I love mornings, but we're taking a different approach this morning.
I have learned to become a morning person. I was not a morning person, but
I was a military brat, so my dad was always
gotcha.
about you get up, I'm up, get ready for school. I had 2 siblings, so I'm the oldest of 3, so that was that process.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so most people I've come across since moving to Arizona in 2014 aren't originally from here. Is that the case with you?
Absolutely. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland.
So we originally moved out here in 2009.
Okay.
And then I moved back again in 2019. So I love it here. It feels like a vacation every day. It's a beautiful place to raise my kids, very different from where I come from, and want to provide them with a different life. So
Okay. How many kids?
3 girls.
3 girls? All
Yes.
girls.
Yes.
Woo-wee. That household. Man, it's got to be something. What are the ages?
So the oldest will be 21 in
Okay.
December. Then the middle just turned 17. And then the youngest will be 16 in December.
Nice,
Yes.
man. Man, a lot of different personalities. I'm
Oh,
assuming.
yes. Girls are colorful.
I have 2 sisters, so I definitely get it as me, and then both siblings, and then my mom as well. Rest in heaven, but I was raised around predominantly women, so I definitely get that.
And I've been blessed with a bonus baby, too, which is also a girl.
Oh, wow.
And she'll be 22 in November. So, yeah. So girls.
Man, girls. I have one myself, so yeah, I definitely get that. What brought you to Arizona from Cleveland?
Actually, my husband. So my husband came out here before we were married, and he was a drummer then. He was playing for Eddie James, and he really loved the environment, and he wanted us to come out here. And to be honest, I was hesitant. I was like, why would we move? Ohio is all I know. Family is here. Never really traveled, never really been out of the box.
Mhm.
So for me, it was comfort. It was comfortable, and I was hesitant. Then I began to pray about it, and God gave me the ability to say, you could do it. Let's go. And to be honest, it's the best move that I've ever made.
Yeah.
It made my mindset grow. I think when you grow up in your hometown and that's all you know and that's all you see, you kind of tend to think small. So moving here helped me to dream bigger. So I'm excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to see change. I was a military brat, so it was always 2-3 years and out everywhere that I've lived and trying to get acclimated. Moved to Arizona, like I said, 2014, and I too love it here.
Do you feel like since you're a military brat and you're used to moving, after a while in a place, do you feel like, okay, what's next? It's time to go. Or do you feel a little settled here?
I feel settled. I feel like Washington was my most impressionable. I spent my most impressionable years there, all throughout high school, after high school as well. You just kind of get rooted in a space of like, I get to make my own decisions at this point now. There's no more my parents saying, hey, we're getting ready to relocate. I'm like, we done doing all that. So I decided to stay in Washington. My dad's last tour, I would have been transferring my senior year and decided to stay. And I lived with my girlfriend at the time and her parents to finish up school instead of transition. It would have been weird, trying to graduate
Especially
with
senior year. It's
senior year.
exciting,
You're just
right?
like, hey, new guys, new friends, no relationships, and it just becomes a little bit tricky. So they definitely allowed me to stay, and I appreciated that aspect of things. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you were a bookworm growing up. And out of all the careers you could have chosen, why therapy, and what made you choose this specific practice?
To be honest, I feel like it chose me.
Okay.
So growing up, I wanted to be something very prestigious, a lawyer, or be on TV, go to Hollywood, be an actress, things like that. So it was never anything that I grew up wanting to be. But when I was in college, I actually took an intro to social work class because I needed something to fill my schedule. And when I took an intro to social work class, I had the amazing professor who was older in age. I want to say he was about in his 60s or 70s at the time.
Okay.
But he was full of life. He was a dancer. He was happy. He had so much joy. And it began to make me think like, wow, I know I won't make as much money, but if I can make people's lives better, that's more than money. And the joy he had with helping people was when I actually began to switch my career. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I began to look at, okay, I can help people and make a difference in the world, So it made me start to rethink what I wanted to be.
So it was all about this teacher putting that different spin on like
Yes.
what your reality was going to be in the future.
Yes.
That is amazing. Can you walk us through a typical day in the life of a therapist, and how do you prepare for and wind down after sessions?
That's a good question. So every day is different.
Mhm.
So you have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible. You have to be a person that practices what you preach. So you can't do sessions every day and teach them how to manage their emotions and how to soothe themselves and how to manage their frustrations when you are not a good master of that yourself. So the first thing, I have to practice what I preach. So most mornings before I come into work, I kind of prepare myself. I get myself in a healthy mental state with meditation, with prayer. I'm a woman of faith. So my main connection is God. So with him, I'm able to lay those burdens down. I'll be honest, in the early part of my career, I didn't know how to do that. So I was carrying everybody's pains, everybody's problems, everything that I encounter for the day. And that's how you kind of get compassion fatigue, is a phrase that we use in the helping field, where you begin to help so much and care so much about others that it takes a tear and wear on you. So in the beginning, I didn't know how to do that. But now, as I have grown, as I have learned to really, be able to stand in that gap and be present for people, but not to let their issues consume me, is, through meditation, through prayer, through being present in the moment. But after that moment is done, being able to be present for the next moment, because I'm seeing multiple clients a day.
What was the change? Was there something that happened that pushed you into saying, hey, I need to focus more on or become more of a God-fearing woman? Or was there a light switch that went off for you?
So I've always had a relationship with God. So I'm born and raised in church. But I think there's a difference of actually knowing who God is and walking with him. So when we know him, I think we just know, like, oh, somebody says God, we're not going to say, what does that word mean? Who is that? I think most people know the word God.
Right.
But as I begin to really practice and really understand what's available to me through him, is what was the page that turned. So it went from a knowing to an understanding. And that's, I think, with everything in life. I think we know a lot of information, especially with professional Google that's available, that we know things, but it doesn't change anything just by knowing it. It changes things by understanding and being able to put into practice what we know.
Okay. What are some of the most common mental health issues you're seeing today, especially post pandemic?
Oh my gosh. Trauma finally being something that we can have language for. So I believe that trauma is not new. I believe that anxiety and depression, none of it is new. It's been around for a very long time. But since COVID, one blessing that I see from COVID is that we're willing to talk about it more openly now. We're not willing to hide it or mask it or pretend that it's not there. COVID has given us the ability now to say, hey, I have spent enough time with myself, being isolated, being closed in, that I want to be honest about the pain that I'm feeling. I want to be honest about what I've been carrying all these years, what I've been masking all of these years. I think it's given us an ability to now find the hope to be honest about it so we can find healing. So I think for the field of mental health, since COVID, finding a therapist is challenging. Probably before COVID, nobody was looking for us, right? Nobody was looking to heal and to get help. But since COVID, to be completely honest, the area of the arena of therapists is hard to come by now because everybody is seeking help. Everybody is seeking change because they were closed in with their thoughts.
I feel, to touch on that, I feel like the same thing around that time frame. I feel like you had a lot of people sitting in front of computer screens or being more prone to being on their phones, even more so, a lot of downtime because we were confined to our homes during that time frame as well. And just really got to hone in on not only who we are, but who other people were, and then focusing on other people's likes and things of that nature. And then you started seeing people speaking on mental health. I felt like at that time, I'm a big fan of The Breakfast Club. I watched that a lot. And Charlamagne the God speaks to mental health. And I really enjoy that aspect because I feel like for me, when I was growing up, my dad was one of those that didn't, champion, being emotional. And that was something that I felt like I was. I don't know if that was based off of, being around mostly women my life, or if that was just a characteristic of like who I was just as a person. But I'm big on vulnerability, and that's a key factor of like who I am. And that's probably the difference between who him and I are as people. But 2019, 2020, I started to see the changes and started to see the world like how you see it. A lot of people being more vocal about that.
And you saw celebrities, you saw actors, you saw people in sports arena begin to open up more about their mental health.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're removing the stigma. Stigma shouldn't have been attached to it to begin with, but it was. But now we're removing the stigma to know that everybody suffers with mental health. Anxiety and depression is what we call common mental illness, meaning every human being will encounter anxiety and depression in their lifetime. So we don't have to feel embarrassed or shame. If you're human, if you're alive, if blood is running through your body, you're going to get anxious, you're going to get depressed, you're going to experience loss, you're going to experience grief, you're going to experience being nervous and some fear. That is normal, that is natural, and it's something that we don't have to be ashamed of.
Yeah, one thing I feel like it's helped through that process is that you don't feel alone anymore, and for me, I know that that wasn't a big thing as far as like growth goes, but just being able to identify with other public figures, whether, it's my peers or like you said, celebrities that are starting to be more vocal about that. I found it to be super important as well, because those are people that, young people aspire to be and wonder how they get to that space. And it just creates a normality for everyone to have an understanding of like, I'm not the only one going through these type of emotions. So.
And they get to influence that. That's what I love when people of stature get to use that ability to influence something good. So they're influencing other people like, hey, I'm being honest about my suicidal thoughts, my attempts of suicide, my depression, where now other people is like, oh my gosh, that sounds familiar. I've experienced that. But we're afraid because we think we're alone. But anxiety and depression, it wants to isolate us. It wants to make us think that so we don't share, so that we don't become free.
Right. How has being a therapist influenced the way you approach motherhood and your relationship, like with your husband?
You know what? It's funny because right now I'm working with adolescents 12 to 17.
Okay.
And I was teaching group yesterday afternoon. And as I was ending the group, I was helping them to understand that we're all in this together, that they make me a better person. They make me a better therapist. They make me a better mom. They make me a better wife. Why? Because every day that I'm reminding them and teaching them, it tells me like, okay, how are you rating yourself in that area? So it's almost like that practice what you preach type of thing, where I'm always looking in the mirror to see that what I'm professing, what I'm teaching, what I'm encouraging other people, am I walking that path myself? And working with, teenagers and having my own children, and the things that I'm working with them in, I'm able to see, okay, were you that mother that they say that they need in those sessions where they saying, hey, I don't feel like my mother sees me, my mother hears me. So now I'm asking myself, would your daughter say the same thing? What can you do differently? So I'm constantly in the mirror because my job keeps me in the mirror, keeps me accountable to myself, to my growth, and to change as well.
Okay. How do you measure progress in therapy, especially when it comes to change? Some might be quick and others might be more long term.
So when it comes to change, I understand that that person is the only individual that's in charge of that.
Mhm.
So I always tell people when they come to me, like, I don't fix broken people. I don't think you're broken. I think you just need to be understood. And when it comes to change, it's not my job to change you. It's my job to maybe you leave your sessions more aware, gaining more insight for you to make those necessary changes. And that's important for a therapist to know, a minister to know, anybody that influences, other people's lives, that you are not the factor of change. Their decisions are. And that's important because if they do well, and we take ownership for that, we're kind of like, that brings up pride.
Right.
But if they do not so well, then you're going to beat yourself up and say, do I belong in this field? You second
Right.
guess yourself. So at the end of the day, I always tell people, I'm just here to provide you with tools and to give you a full toolbox. It's your job to be able to apply those tools to your life and be consistent to making that change.
You said something important there to me, at least. Help me define what broken. You had mentioned broken. You're not here to fix broken people. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So when I look at it, I think a lot of people see their flaws, they see their weaknesses, they see the things that they've experienced, even their trauma,
Mhm.
as something that broke them. But I like to offer them a different perspective. Maybe that's the thing that made you who you are. Maybe that's the thing that's going to lead you into your purpose. Maybe that's the thing that's going to help you become who you needed to be from the beginning. So being able to look at what we may call broken, then we can look at it as an opportunity for growth, that we can look at it for an opportunity to, bring about change. So I think people always look at themselves as broken or ill-equipped, but being able to take those flaws and those weaknesses and turn them into strengths.
Why do you feel like we lean on that so much as people when I hear that a lot going into relationships, like that person's broken and haven't gotten past the past and things of that nature. Why do we lean on that as a crutch, so to speak, as uh, a way of answering or a space that we're in instead of just accepting accountability for maybe not being ready for the next step?
I think we lack language for it. So we just say what sounds familiar or cliche.
Mhm.
I think we also lacked accountability, like of understanding what it really is.
Mhm.
So we just call it, oh, they're broken or they're not ready or they went through this. So you're not accountable to maybe you haven't worked through certain things and you're no different than where they are,
Mhm.
right? Or we just don't have the words or the language. So what I like to do in my therapy sessions is I'm always finding language for things. And what I mean by that is when people come to my therapy sessions, I always give them this disclaimer up front because sometimes I'll say, well, what do you mean by that? Explain that. I never want to assume
Mhm.
because all we have is words. And if we say love for me means something different than it means for you.
Right.
So if people just use words in my sessions and I don't have description for it, then I can't really help them in more depth. And the more that I begin to figure out what they meant by that, it uncovers a root cause of an issue that they may be facing or a reason or a motive behind their behaviors and actions. So I'm always big on helping people to find language, helping people to describe something. Because most of the time we can't describe it, even with mental health. When we're feeling frustrated and angry or we're dealing with trauma, the reason why we run from it is because we don't like how it feels. It feels uncomfortable.
Right.
And we don't know how to word it. We don't know how to express it. We don't know how to find language for it. One, we've never been taught that. So the things that I teach, I hear my kids at work all the time say, we should have a class in school that teaches this. And I agree with them. So I want to figure out a way to partner with schools to bring mental health into the curriculum. It can even go into physical health, right?
Yeah.
We could find a space for it because we haven't been taught this, but yet we are responsible for being able to do something that wasn't taught and really wasn't modeled.
Yeah, to be able to catch something maybe prior to someone reaching a certain point, and we see a lot of things being disruptive as far as schools go, like school shootings and things of that nature. And we're wondering how, if we could have put a finger on that situation prior to it even escalating to that point, maybe we could have made a change throughout that process instead
That
of it
prevention,
reaching that
right?
point. Yeah.
Because when they do physical health, they talk about drugs and alcohol. So they're trying to do drug prevention. They talk about sexual transmitted diseases and how to have protected sex. So they're doing preventative services for that.
Mhm.
But nobody's talking about the most important part of our being, which is our mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of that, I worked for a company in Phoenix inside the Make-A-Wish Foundation building. I do staffing. I do business development for
Oh,
staffing. So
nice.
I go out, get business, bring it back, have recruiters fill the roles. There's a company inside the building called Wilman Construction. Amazing company. I always talk with the receptionists and the people that work there, and just everybody just always seems really excited about being there. They're really big on team building. They do a lot of things for people that work for the company, such as in-house massages. They're big on mental health, and I hear about them chipping in to help make sure that if anybody's going through things, they're one to help financially. If that person's not able to take care of it themselves, they'll foot the bill, so to speak,
Wow.
which I find to be amazing. And I wish more companies were like that. What's your perspective on mental health in workspaces, and how can employers do better with supporting their staff through that process?
So most of my career, I worked in like state government.
Mm-hmm.
And with state government, they always had what we call EAP. So it's this program that when you are struggling, say you're going through life changes or compassion fatigue, where the work is become your stress, that they have a therapist that you could talk to. I honestly don't know how many people are aware of that, because I'm pretty sure more jobs do offer that, but people aren't just aware. So I think that most employers can make sure that their employees are aware that when they're struggling with their mental health and well-being, that there is a service in place that is paid through the company's benefits that can help you. So I think most workforces have that. I just don't think it's advertised enough or underutilized. Maybe they think, well, if I go to this therapist is connected somehow to my job, so they're going to tell them what we're talking about.
I don't want everybody
So
to
the
know
fear,
my business.
right? So I think it's the fear of that, like maybe it'll get back. So maybe if we can, educate more, advertise more, and let them know that it's completely confidential. That's what I tell people all the time. With therapy, it's completely confidential. It is the safest place to tell all your business. It is the safest place to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to judge you. They can't repeat it. It's against the law. So I want people to really understand that therapy is a safe space, and they can't tell your boss what you're saying. But I think with more companies, if they don't have that service, to kind of get with their provider to offer that service, because if you ensure that your employees have good mental health, they're going to offer more quality work, which is going to increase the network of your business anyway. So it helps everybody all the way around.
Most definitely. You had spoke about, you have 3 kids, 3 girls, and then a bonus girl. Do you talk openly, or when did you decide to start talking openly with your kids about mental health? And how do you make sure they feel comfortable with sharing what's on their mind?
So that is a challenge, because kids nowadays are just used to messaging or swiping and watching videos
Mm-hmm.
and not having conversations with that. So it's been a journey, and knowing that each of them are different.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I'm still seeing that there's so much the same, because nobody want to talk about how they feel. And for me, it didn't become a bigger deal for me until I really immersed myself in mental health. And the beautiful part about it is, guess when I really immersed myself in mental health?
When?
In 2020.
Oh.
Right? So I immersed myself completely, wholeheartedly, fully in my career in mental health during COVID. And I think it was a blessing in and of itself, because it was a great need, but it also was a great eye opener,
Mm-hmm.
as well. So for me, that's when my journey. So when we began to look at the book club, the Be Whole movement, to look at all of that started around that time, because I began to really see like, wow, we're hurting. Wow, we need an answer. We need a solution. That is my personality. When people talk to me, I'm very compassionate,
Mm-hmm.
but and I think nobody would deny that. But I'm very problem solving or goal oriented. I don't want to just talk about the problem. I don't just want to hear you cry and complain. I want to hear that part. I want you to vent. I want you to get it out. I want to hug you and support you. Then after we wipe our tears, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do about it? Right?
Right.
So I'm always solution focused. I'm always trying to figure out, how do we change? How do we get something greater? How do we do something differently? And that birthed everything that I'm doing now. So when I look at, even with my kids, I'm like, well, first, you got to learn to talk about your own mental health, your own emotions, your own thoughts. You got to find language for it. You can't expect them to do something that you haven't navigated, that you haven't tried, that you are not practicing. So it first began with me. And then after that, with them, they don't like to talk about it. So I began to say, okay. So I made a suggestion to them. I said, when I ask you about how are you feeling, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, or they say, I'm fine. I know you're not fine. I'm your mother. I can see your demeanor. I see your nonverbals. And most of our communication is nonverbal. So you could tell somebody's body language by how they're actually doing. So with my girls, I'm like, they could text me. They could write me a note to start the conversation. So that way, by the time I read the note or I read the letter they left on my bed, that now it gives me a doorway to what they're experiencing. And now we can have an open conversation where they feel like they can maybe say less because they wrote it out. So being able to know your child, being able to know that they struggle with communication, because this generation does as a whole, figuring out creative ways. And I figure out, okay, maybe they could just text me. If you don't want to tell me what's wrong, you don't want to talk about it right now because it feels overwhelming, how about you text it or write it, which is journaling. So in a sense, I'm getting and helping them to practice releasing their emotions, because the whole thing is emotions are meant to flow.
And meeting them in the middle pretty much
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Yep. So meeting them in the middle, they don't want to talk about it up front because it feels overwhelming. Okay, go write about it. And I say text because they're always on their phone and they're sending text messages or DMs. So I'm like, text me about it. Or I'm like, write it on a piece of paper and leave it on my bed. So I'll come to my room, I'll get out the shower or do whatever I'm doing, and I'll come to a letter on my bed. And now I'm like, okay, now it gives me, which I think is a win-win for both of us. Because as a parent, I'm not caught off guard. Now I know what you're struggling with. I can get a game plan in advance and say, okay, maybe I could offer this. Maybe I could be more supportive over here. I feel like I'm more prepared, right? So I think it's a win-win for both of us. They don't have to say all of it up front. They could write it out. They could text it out. And then that makes them feel better and also helps me prepare to address it.
Okay. I'm sure they've asked you about your work, obviously through the process of you being a therapist. Explain the kind of emotional support you offer as a therapist to them, though. Just a little bit more elaborate.
To my girls or to the clients?
To both.
Okay. So right now I'm working with kids. Before this, I was working with adults for a couple of years in mental health. I just switched over to working with teens about a year ago. And I will have to say I love the switch because now I get to start a lot earlier, which it seems like more productive, because I was working with adults who were dealing with 30 years, 40 years, 60 years of addiction, of unhealed trauma, right?
A lot to overcome.
So a lot to overcome. Now I'm dealing with them a lot younger and teaching them things so they can make the rest of their life the best of their life. It's teaching them with strategies and tools that can help. So sometimes I come home, even being in child protective services and now I'm being in therapy, it's a field with high confidentiality. So you really can't go home and share your day. You really can't go home and talk about other people's business, right?
Yeah.
And then in a sense, you really don't want to. You want to be able to take off that hat. And then before I come out the garage, put on my other hat, because now I have to show up as a mom. I have to show up as a wife, right? I have to show up in my different roles. So that takes flexibility, adaptability, skill as well, right?
It's a lot.
So sometimes my kids say, why do you sit in the garage so long when you get home? Because I can sit there for a good while, good 20, 30 minutes before I come in, because I'm preparing myself to take off one hat and put on another.
Unpacking.
I'm unpacking the day. I'm having to leave that day where it was and then being able to show up for them. Because early in my career, like I told you earlier, I didn't do that too well. And I'll be completely honest and transparent. When I got home, I gave my family what was left of me, right? They got what was left, not the best of me. And I gave my best to the clients and the people that I encountered throughout the day. I gave them my patience. I gave them my understanding. I gave them all of the best parts of me. When I got home, I was tired. I was a little fatigued. So then they got the short fused me, the person who didn't have a lot of grace or patience, right? And then I had to switch that because I'm like, no, they deserve the best of me as well. So I had to figure out a way to handle it. Because remember I said before, I didn't know how to carry everybody's problems and what I did throughout the day and not be able to bring it home. But when I realized that's not how it should be, I had to figure out how to better manage it and balance it.
Yeah, that's gotta be a lot, taking off a hat and then going in and acting as if your day wasn't rough. I mean, I go through it, but I feel like the thing with it being more mental, it's heavy. I work in sales, so it's just like there is no physical aspect of things. It's a mind game, no different from, what you do more or less. Well, not the depth of what you do, but definitely I can definitely understand where you're coming from.
How I best explain it, I tell people, I said, most people jobs, they deal with numbers, they deal with products. We deal with people. And when you deal with people, that's a lot. You're dealing with different personalities, different problems. So it's definitely a lot to manage. So it's a different type of profession. that only people I think that's in the profession that deal with people on the mental health level will understand. And then unless we find that balance, we're not going to last. Yeah.
What's something you'd say you learned from your kids that's helped you become a better therapist or even just a better person?
Wow. so, you know, something my kids always say, and they always tease. They always say, Mom's favorite word is trauma. It's like, Mom is always talking about trauma. Everybody has trauma, you know. So they tease a lot, but in their teasing and their jokes, I reflect on them to see what they're really saying. Because I always tell people all the time, jokes are truth and laughter. And it's easier for people to receive it. So when they're joking about certain things, you know, sometimes I laugh with them in the moment, but I'm a deep thinker. I'm like, what are they really trying to say? What are they really trying to say? And what else they teach me too, that at work, when people be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You really helped me. It is easier to be a therapist at work than to actually be a mom at home. Right. So it's like like I said before, they keep this constant mirror in front of me where I'm thinking I may be rating myself an 8 over here in a conversation with them. I'd be like, ooh, I think they giving me like a 3 or a 4. I got to do better in this area because we're really honest with each other. We have a lot of vulnerable and transparent conversations and they help me. They keep me humble. How about that? They keep me humble for sure.
No, most definitely. Yeah. How has motherhood changed your perspective on life, both personally and professionally?
I think it changed everything. From the moment that I got pregnant at 19 years old, life became real serious. It became more about becoming the woman I needed to be for them. I remember a post I made about Mother's Day, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I told women, I encouraged women or tried to influence women to become the woman you want your children to be. Don't just say it. Don't just teach them. Because if you become it, we don't have to nag. We don't have to do a lot of talking. We just have to live it and walk it. And they're able to watch how we deal with hard things in life, how we deal with, you know, different situations and able to persevere, how we treat people, how we respond to things, how we talk, how we bounce back. I think if we become it and not just tell them what to be, like when we grew up, it's just said, you know, do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
That never made any sense, right? Never made any sense, right? And I'm like, what? That doesn't add up. So for me, I definitely wanted to practice what I preach. I definitely wanted my words to match my actions. I wanted to become a woman that they looked up to say, you know what? I want to be like my mom for good reasons, right? So it changed everything about me. It changed everything that I desire to be even to this day, you know. And each day I desire to learn and grow. I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm never going to feel like I ever arrived. I'm always looking to be able to learn. And I think having daughters is really like in your face, you know, helping you to see yourself, helping to see how you were at that age. And it's also helping you to have more grace. Because sometimes as parents, we're expecting things out of them that we haven't mastered yet. We're expecting things for them to do that we're like, well, how old were you when you finally were able to manage your emotions and manage your behaviors and, you know, regulate yourself and bite your tongue and walk away? You know, you weren't 14, you weren't 15, you weren't 16, you weren't 17. So it teaches us to be more patient, to have more grace, but also to become what we're asking them to be.
What do you feel like the biggest practices you feel like you've had to overcome when you think about your upbringing from your parents? Because I look at things from a perspective of like my parents were very protective in certain manners because they felt what they were doing was just, but they didn't want to give all the answers to certain things, maybe feeling like I didn't know how to handle it at that time, or it just made sense to them, but never circling back and addressing, this is why I told you this per se.
I don't think, to be completely honest, I think our parents didn't know. And they didn't want to be honest or vulnerable enough to say, I didn't know. So they did things just as they were handed down to them, right? So they didn't want to, and they couldn't teach us what they didn't know. Like I always teach people can't give you what they don't have. It's like saying, hey, Jackie, can I borrow $1 million? As much as I would want to say, you know what, that's a good cause and a good reason, as much as I would want to do it, if I don't have it, I can't give it. So a lot of things our parents didn't have to give. Like when we're talking about mental health. In their day and age, everything was suppressed. Everything was like an elephant in the room. Everything was pushed under the rug. So how can they teach us how to manage our emotions, how to be vulnerable, how to understand our emotions if it was never taught to them?
That's why I feel like for me, when I look at things, as far as upbringing goes. My biological dad wasn't there. Who I know is my dad, and I respect him as my dad. He took on the responsibility of two. Um, and I feel like some of the hardships came along because he came from a space of just having siblings around. And his mother passed away, in his younger years. His dad wasn't present, so he was raised by his siblings. So to marry someone that has two kids and your dad wasn't present, so you're already behind the eight ball.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are taking on responsibilities to be someone else's father, which put him in a weird space too, because there was a lot of trial and error through that process. And then when I feel like, when my daughter was conceived through the process and how slow it was for me to play catch up through that process because of lack of understanding of what a parent was like through that process. Just trying to figure out ways of being able to create that balance and speed that process up as far as like addressing things and breaking that generational curse. What do you feel like you've done or you've learned most as far as like upbringing that put you in a space of like, I'm not going to do that because this is how I was affected by that?
Mm-hmm. So when I look at my mom and dad, so my parents have been married, I want to say 52 years.
That's a blessing.
52 years, which is a blessing. It's a beautiful blessing.
Yes.
And a beautiful example. They birthed 11 children, so I definitely have
Hold on. You don't move. You moving too fast right now. 11?
It's 11 of us. I'm the middle of 11. I have 5 older, 5 younger. I'm smack in the middle.
Oh, wow. Yes. That's amazing.
So it was 7 boys and 4 girls. One of my brothers are deceased, so we're 10 still living. But yes, 7 boys, 4 girls, and I'm smack in the middle. 11 children. And growing up, the famous question was, same mother and father? So when I was young, I used to say, I have 10 siblings, same mother and father. I just added to my...
just so nobody...
Because everybody wanted to know because they were just so intrigued. You didn't
right.
really see those type of big families, as I was growing up. So I definitely have a foundation of love, that my parents have taught me. And even the mistakes that they have made through the way, it wasn't intentional. They did what they knew. They gave me what they had. And I am so grateful for that. But being able to look now, just being in the field of mental health, being in the field of I love learning. I love information. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that I'm learning and I'm gathering that I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And I'm seeing the cycles and I'm seeing the generational curses. And I am that person in my family that want to be able to break those. And I want to break that just through knowledge and information. I don't want to bash anybody. I don't want to say, well, why didn't you give us this? Or why didn't you do that? That is not what it's about, because they did the best that they can. They did a really good job overall. But now I'm like to the point where I want to educate and, provide that knowledge and awareness so that we can all be better.
Mm-hmm. What's something you feel like you're still learning, as you were touching on, as far as a mom, even with having a background of being a therapist?
That you never arrive, that you never know everything. That even when you think like, I know I used the term earlier about expertise, or experience, but I think that when you're dealing with people, you really are never expert. You are really never experienced. And you have to show yourself some grace and mercy. Because sometimes, when you do things great and you have a great session and you could feel it in your heart that something happened and
right.
You're like, oh my gosh, I think they're ready to make this change. And then even after they're done, they're like, thank you. And you have helped me so much. You feel inspired, like I'm gifted for this. But then you have that one client or that one person or that one child that you've tried all of your tools and they don't work. And you be like, am I an imposter? Do I really know what I'm doing? Am I really meant for this? Where you have to deal with your own negative thoughts. You have to deal with your own things that you tell yourself, right? So you have to be able to still look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm human. And sometimes I may get it right and sometimes I may get it wrong, but that doesn't mean, that I'm not going in the right direction. So showing some grace with yourself. I think sometimes I used to beat myself up a lot because I was trying to work towards perfection, but I realized it doesn't really exist, that all I have to do is commit to progression and that I'm doing what I need to do.
Are you the definition of a middle child?
No, I don't agree with that. And I'm as middle as it get because my older sister is 11 years older than me. Okay. And my baby sister is 11 years younger than me. Oh, so wow. I'm middle. But I know I don't agree with that. I don't know if I'm in denial or or I am like middle that I have a really good understanding of it. And I'm like, no, that's not me.
It's funny you say that. My baby sister and I are 11 years apart. And I feel like the disconnect for her and I, like growing up, is the fact that I wasn't in the house. I wasn't present at that time. So a lot of her experience of knowing who I am as a person is basically conversations and things that are being said, not life experiences. And I feel like over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's been more pertinent in regards to us sharing a lot more information and starting from scratch. And you didn't know this about me, and just being more vulnerable in conversations in which I take pride in, and just trying to get to a good space. And yeah, since my mom passed in 2017, I've tried to revamp and do a lot of things different, and family just being like the nucleus and wanting to see things in a better space now.
And I want to celebrate that. I know you're asking me questions right now, but I do want to pause and celebrate that, you are becoming more vulnerable. You are in tune with allowing your emotions to flow, that you are becoming that nucleus for your family, that you are becoming the change that you want to see, which I think is beautiful, especially as a guy, as a man, that hopefully other people around you will take heed of that and begin to practice that, because I think we need our men to be more vulnerable like you are willing to be. And that's when you become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I look at things when I was growing up. My grandparents were the nucleus of everything. So like whether you had issues with other relatives, when you show up at the grandparents' house, you leave that at the door, or at least be amicable towards everybody throughout the process of being there. And when they went their separate ways after 40 some odd years, I feel like that broke up the family dynamics in so many ways. The connection of people just wasn't there anymore. There was no leadership through the process. Everybody's just kind of doing their own thing. And we all kind of created our own ways, which I feel like turned into disrespect throughout time. And now we're putting Band-Aids on things, so to speak, because of certain things that we were affected by, where we're questioning like, that wasn't that important for us to be in this space. How can we fix it? And that's something I'm really big on when it comes to my siblings, as well as staying in communication with my father, especially with my mother no longer being here. So those are heavy avenues that I try to attest to throughout time. So,
and when you begin to think about it, though, even you're thinking about your grandparents, marriage is like the foundation of our community. And then when you lose that, when you lose the matriarch and the patriarch being in their positions, then you don't have that sense of accountability. You don't have that sense of structure and leadership. And like you said, everybody begins to do what they think is right, which brings division, which brings disruption, disagreement, conflict, and it doesn't bring together that unity, in the family.
Yeah. We're going to go a little bit lighthearted now. What do you feel is the secret to keeping things fun at home when life gets stressful?
Being able to laugh about it, everything, not being too serious. I am a very goofy person, even though I'm getting older. I just turned 40 this year, but even though I'm getting older and I'm not as silly as I was as a teenager, I still think that laughter is still in my soul, that I still love having a good time. I still love laughing. I still love being silly, not thinking, being too serious. Because I think sometimes we get too serious. Sometimes we get so focused on succeeding that we forget to enjoy the present moment. So I am, as a therapist, once again, I like to teach people how to be more mindful.
Right.
We are so not mindful. Have you ever driven in your car and next thing you know, you're pulling in the driveway and you don't really remember the ride home? You were so stuck in your head or thinking about something else. That is not mindfulness. Or you're at an event and you're not really present and enjoying the vacation or the event or the party because you're worried about work, you're worried about a problem that you can't solve. So one thing that I'm learning how to do is to be present. I realize that the present is called a present because it's a gift. And we usually lose out on the present moment as a gift because we're worried about what happened yesterday and how we could have did things differently, which is regret. Or we're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, the fear of anxiety of things that hasn't happened yet, that we don't live in the present moment. So living in the present moment teaches me how to be fun, how to enjoy it, and how not to allow the moments to pass, because life is full of moments. And if you keep missing the moment because of yesterday and tomorrow, that you're missing out on enjoying life to its fullest. So I'm learning how to be more present, especially when I'm with my kids. That's why I take a long time in the garage because when I go in, I want to connect. I want to be able to say, how was your day? I want to be able to look them in the eye. I want to give them my full undivided attention, just check in with them, to have fun with them, and not to be worried about, oh, I didn't do this or what do I have to do tomorrow? No, I want to be present right here, right now with my family to give them the best of me.
That's dope. That's dope. Well, now we've reached the part of the show called
And if you don't know, now you 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 know.
This is the part of the show that normally clients and customers have questions for a featured entrepreneur. This is a special show, so I took a different approach. Today, we got to learn about Jacque. We got to learn about Jacque's family dynamics and Jacque's day-to-day therapy workings at the Avery House. Now it's time to shed some light on the nonprofit organization called the Be Whole Movement. What inspired you to start the Be Whole Movement, and what personal experiences influenced the mission?
Good question. So when I began to think about how to answer that, I think it goes back to, remember I told you before, I started a lot of this in 2020. And in 2021, I started a book club for women. And it was on Saturdays. It still is, every Saturday at noon, East Coastern time. Every Saturday I do that. And as I'm doing the book club and women are coming together, we're talking on Zoom, we're expressing, we're becoming vulnerable, we're becoming transparent. Through that endeavor, I began to think about, ways to support women and how to, work on helping us to become whole. I think a lot of times we can do good in one area. For example, we can go to work and we can show up at work and do a good job at work, but at home, we're not the best mother, right? We're not the best spouse. We're not even good to ourselves. So beginning the movement of Be Whole was helping women to do good in all areas and capacities of their lives, whether that be, with their mental health, their physical health, their emotional well-being, their spirituality, just helping them to see themselves as a whole and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves in all of those capacities. So that's where that vision came from, was really started from that book club and just hearing all the women's stories every Saturday and figuring out what is another way that I can influence, and empower
women.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the specific programs or services that you're offering women and how they address women's needs?
Yes. So right now we have every Saturday book club, and it's via Zoom. So anybody could participate from anywhere. That information is on my website. I also do an annually Whole Woman Conference, which is actually coming up next week in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So each year I pick a different state so that I'm moving it around. I do that intentionally so that I can reach more people with the mission. So like I said, the whole mission is to help women to become whole and healed. So I want women to become healed from their past so they don't continue to live there. And also to become whole, meaning that their finances and their physical health and their mental health and their spiritual health, all of those things are being attended to as well in order for them to be their best selves in their everyday lives. In addition to that, I do a girl talk event, here in Arizona once a month where I, try to build the confidence, the mental health, the ability of young girls to know who they are, to help them to learn some healthy coping skills and some skills that can help them to be the best version of themselves in today's world.
Is that something you have your daughters take part in as well?
So actually, my daughters are the ones who asked.
Nice.
They came to my conference last year, actually. And they said, Mom, this is so beautiful. Because I did let them come. Because usually I do 18 and over.
Okay.
But now I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter the age, because I'm learning that this generation are going through a lot of things that grown women are experiencing. And the earlier that we can educate them, the better. So I let them come, made an exception, because of course they're my babies. And they're like, we want to come and see. So they came to the conference last year and they asked me, they said, can you do something for our age group? I think that could be very beneficial, for our age group. So that's where Girl Talk was birthed out of, from my girls asking me to help their generation.
That's amazing. That's definitely amazing. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have when you're talking about issues women face, and how does your organization address some of these misconceptions?
I think, with women, people think that they could be controlling or dominating, or they may talk too much or want to manage everything. In a sense, I don't think that's who we were created to be, but I think in some situations it's who we have had to become.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, some women, they may say, oh my gosh, she's so opinionated, or she's so bossy, or that's not who she wanted to be. Like I tell my kids, do you think parents want to nag?
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. We would wish that the chores were done, the homework was completed, so we don't have to nag. So sometimes women become what they don't want to be because of a lack of a presence of, let's just go straight there, of a guy that's not in his position or role, or that is, like earlier when we were talking about, grandparents and parents. If you really look at a male, especially in our community. So
Right.
I can only speak about what I am. I'm not making this about race, but I can only speak to my experiences, and my knowledge. But when you think about, African-American community, a lot of the males in past generations, their primary responsibility was to provide. So they worked most of the day. They provided for the family. They didn't connect with the kids on an emotional level. So I don't think it was intentional. I don't think they knew how to. Right. So now we have to understand that as we're moving forward, that, women had to become, in a sense, what wasn't there. So I think they become dominating because they had no choice but to become that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that what we want it to be, but sometimes what you need it to be in that situation. And now learning how, okay, I can relax now. I don't have to do that. I can relax and really know my role and my place, and be able to embrace that. So I would love that women, not just women, but the world can know how creative women are. Like we don't just birth life, we birth ideas, we birth the world. So I want women to know how beautiful they are. I want women to know how special, how intelligent, how creative that they are. And I also want them to begin to value themselves more so that the world can value us more too.
Okay. Can you share a story or an experience that has been particularly like rewarding or challenging through your work with the Behold movement?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with maybe like testimonials. So I told you I've been doing the book club. So this is the 3rd year that I've been doing that.
Okay.
And most of my work is faith-based. So everything that I do, because it's who I am, is surrounded by, the knowledge of God. So with the book club is called Women After God's Own Heart Book Club. And most of the book selections that we do read is faith-based. And as I begin to look back, I have my god sister that's a part of the book club. And when she watches this, look, hey, Candy.
Hi, Candy.
Right. One thing that she says is, she was like, I've been in church all my life, and she's been through a lot of different things, and she's going to have an amazing testimony, amazing book, amazing ministry, amazing community work that she's going to be able to do because of all the pain and the struggles that she's been through. And she's coming on the other side of that. But one of the most beautiful things is, she said that I have learned so much being a part of this book club every Saturday that I have learned from church, that I've learned from family, from my parents, from anything that I've ever been connected with, which to me is beautiful, because all we're doing is creating a safe space for sisterhood, creating a safe space for women to share their trauma, to share their stories, to share their emotions and things that they've been through, so that we can learn, grow, and heal together. So at the end of the day, it's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, look at what I'm doing. It's not about me. It's about us. And it's about every woman that, decides to attach themselves to the vision, because I always tell them it's what you can get out of it, and it's always something beautiful for them to get out of it, but you also have to put something in.
How do we join alliances so that men can see what's going on, being like, so to speak, like a fly on the wall, so that way we have more of an understanding and may be able to approach situations with more grace? Because
I don't know
we
that.
see that,
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle. I'm single. I'm still trying to find my way with someone, and I'd love to be a part of something, or at least have an understanding of like, where's my disconnect? What am I doing wrong that's not making sense?
So I don't have the perfect answer, but I am a deep thinker.
Okay,
and I want to be able to ponder that. But I think what we're doing today is a start to something that could be, an avenue to kind of help men get those answers, right? So maybe even one Saturday, I'm going to tell the ladies, hey, we're going to have a guest come and join us on our book club,
Yes.
And he wants to ask some questions from his point of view, and we can give some advice. And then from there, maybe we could start some type of forum with men and women,
That would be amazing.
And we could facilitate it together,
That
right?
would be, that would
we
be
can
amazing.
open up that door. So I'm open to really pondering how we could do this together.
You heard it first. You heard it here first. What do you hope your long-term legacy of the Behold movement will be for future generation?
So for me, everything that I do is with intention. That's who I've kind of been even in my teenage years, you know, even when dating my husband. Everything that I did had to have a purpose attached to it. So I didn't just date a person just to date. I date with, they couldn't be a husband. And people my age was like, why are you thinking about marriage and you're only 16? Or
it's what you've seen though, growing up with your parents.
Oh, true. Yep. And for me, it's always about, it has to have intention. I just don't do anything for the sake of doing. So even with Behold Movement, everything about it is with intention. You know, I don't want to, at my funeral, just have my obituary have the day I came and the day that I left. But I want to leave an impact. You know how when we look at the world and we know that Martin Luther King Jr. passed through, and why do we know that? Because of the legacy that he left, the impact that he left. So I'm hoping that through Behold Movement and just through the impact of who I am, my ministry, you know, therapy, everything that I offer is bringing about change and healing for people. And they continue to pass that down to the next generation. That's why I love working with the teens right now, because I tell them all the time, your parents have not been educated about this information I'm sharing with you guys. So I want you to go home and educate them, because like I said before, in order to reach the world, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if I start with just a child, they could teach their family. If I start with women, they could teach their children.
Planting the seed.
So being able to plant that seed and watch it grow.
Nice. If you could give your younger self advice from a few years ago, what would you say would be the balancing portion of your career as far as family life goes?
Have more grace, have more mercy with myself. You know, I think a lot of times, a lot of what I did was out of performance. I definitely had true passion for it and true care, but a lot of it was out of performance, because I think we get a lot of our value from what we do. A lot of our value from what people may see, and learning how it's more important what they don't see, you know, so being able to be that person behind closed doors when no one is looking. So integrity, you know, is defining that for me. So being able to increase, you know, my integrity in all places and things is what I look to grow from. And I think as I continue to move through with Behold Movement, to be moving through, you know, my career as a therapist, as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, you know, as a life coach, as a confidant, that the most thing that I value the most is my integrity. Like who I am when no one's looking is amazing to me. And sometimes I got to say, girl, you are amazing. Like in my private time, because the things that people don't see, I'm like, that is really who I am.
Yeah.
And this is not, like I said, because we're so much about image. We're so much about what people see and what we want to present. And then when we go home, it's almost like a mask. We take it off and we're not that same person to our family. So a lot of times my kids will say, quit treating me like your client. I am not your client. Or my husband will say the same thing. And I try to get them to understand this is who I am. It is not an act at work. It's not an act on book club. It's not an act with Behold Movement. This is who I am as a whole individual. I just want everybody to be whole. I want everybody to learn how to process their emotions. So I'm not treating you like a client. I'm treating you like I want everybody to be treated with love and compassion and understanding. So
good deal. Well, we're about to wrap things up. I definitely want to thank you for your time today. Is there anything you'd like to leave the people with? You know,
just the journey of healing. I always encourage people everywhere that I go that I think that everyone can benefit from a therapist. Everyone. If I tell people, if a therapist needs a therapist, if we need somewhere to dump, to process, to understand, you know, to regain our strength, how is it that, you know, everyday people who deal with society every day, challenges every day, hurt, struggles, and trauma, don't have an outlet to release it. So I want to encourage every listener out there that's watching, that's listening to this, encouraging them to get a therapist, get somebody that you could talk to. Remember that a therapist is the best place to tell your secrets. They can't tell anyone. They're not going to judge you, and they're bound by confidentiality. There are certain things that they can't even tell a judge that you release in your sessions that even a judge or court of law cannot subpoena them to say, what did they share in their therapy session? So it's the safest place to be completely vulnerable. And not only that, it's going to help you to move towards healing. We can't heal what we won't reveal. And usually we won't reveal it until we feel safe. And therapy is usually the safest place that we feel. And even as a believer, I always tell people, you need Jesus and a therapist. You know, you need both to be able to unpack this, because we're both natural and spiritual. So we have to deal with ourselves on both of those levels. So do yourself a favor and heal. Do yourself a favor and give your family the best gift that you can ever be. And that's the healed version of you.
Nice. Well, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate
Thank
your
you for
time here,
having
Jacque.
me.
You can't heal what you can't reveal.
Yep.
And then we're going to leave it at that, people. Thank you for joining us on the It Was All a Dream podcast. Until next time. Peace.